This is such a treat to have you. I know it's a full circle moment and multiple levels for you and me, for you and your book launch almost a year ago. And so I just want to kick it off with connecting all the dots in terms of synergies. You can see behind me, we have Fintech Feminists. This is Nicole's book. She has it behind her as well. So we are aligned, and I'm so excited to share more about you. You have so many different titles. When you think of them, CEO, founder, author, journalist, media maven, which one stands out to you the most?
Oh man, I think for me it's always
I think we're having some technical difficulty.
Okay. Am I frozen, or is Nicole frozen too?
I believe frozen. I think Nicole is frozen. Maybe she can log on
Oh,
and log
okay.
back on.
She's back.
Am I back?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I just live in Brooklyn, which means
Yeah.
my internet doesn't work every now and then. For no reason whatsoever. So I just switch over to my hotspot. So T-Mobile take the wheel. Okay.
Yes.
To answer your question, now that I'm back,
Yeah.
I would say journalist. Journalist has always, for me, been it's what I went to school for. It's what I've always wanted to do. I have like my own, kind of spicy takes on what journalism is and how I like to portray my profession. And it was a title that people have tried to like tell me to get rid of, but and call myself something else, a creator, whatever it is. But for me, it's always, my journalism has always been the driving force of what's made me, the media company, the work different, right? And so yeah. Although it is cool to be called a media maven, I like that too.
I love alliteration too, so we're running with that.
Yeah.
But now, of course, I have to hear the spicy take. What is it as it relates to journalism and what people were saying in terms of removing the title for all the other ones you've taken on?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my spiciest take on journalism is that objectivity isn't real. I don't think, I think that the guise of objectivity is it's just not honest. It's just not honest. It's just not authentic. I've sat in enough newsrooms in my career to know that no matter how objective you try to be, there's someone, some editor, some writer making a decision of what makes the cut, what makes the headline, what makes the news. And that is a decision to fuel the narrative that our society then lives and breathes. What we see in the media completely portrays what happens in reality, right? And vice versa. So that for me is the take that not a lot of people don't agree with me on, but hey, I also think that like, especially as a business journalist and finance and tech, it's really on us to be showcasing new voices, the voices of people that go untold or need to be uncovered and showcase what is possible. What does a better or good or a more sustainable and thriving economy and life look like through the lens of the way that other people are building companies and running their businesses and serving their communities. Like, I think too much of media centers around what's going to get the most clicks and as easy as possible. And Ruthie, I know you and I both know we're not interested in easy. Like
No, we're not. No, we're not. Which is why, there's so much to say there in terms of two things you called out, like objectivity in general and what that actually means and looks like. And then how you took that in terms of telling new stories, right? Like I love this idea of giving voice to the underrepresented person, group, community, etc. And that's what you've created, right, with Fintech Is Femme. And so I'd love to hear how you were able to do that, what inspired you, the journey from journalist to founder is fascinating. So let's hear that too.
Yeah, no, thank you. Basically just I've worked at a number of different trade publications. I've covered housing and mortgages and auto vehicle finance, right? Like, which is such a fun and interesting niche. But what I have found is it was I think a lot of people want to be in journalism or want to be a part of the news media, and there's a lot of excitement around creating for the masses. I had learned in my career that I could actually be even more influential, even if not as publicly seen, creating for decision makers. So the people who consume my content, exactly. The people who consume my content are the CEOs. They're the CEOs, they're the founders, they're the innovators, they're the builders, they're the VCs writing the check. They're the ones saying, ooh, Nicole wrote about that founder. Like, maybe I should be paying attention to her. Like, people through my newsletter and my work, I've seen it. I've seen a woman founder in fintech raise millions of dollars for the first time through the amplification in my newsletter or on a stage that I've created. I've seen like the money ebb and flow in the way that creates more opportunity for others through the work. So but really I was at the last publication I was at before I started Fintech Is Femme, and it's the intro of the book whenever you read it. But an editor finally looked at me and just said, Nicole, you can't cover women and fintech. I need you to pick one, or I need you to choose. And it felt very odd to me. Like, why are we separating women entrepreneurs or women execs, right? Like, if I write a profile feature on Sallie Krawcheck, why is that not deemed front page news just like anything else? Why does it have to be sidebarred or segmented for the diversity section, for the women's month, for the a special issue,
any group?
Yeah, whereas we should just be covering women in business, finance, tech, like anything, everyday news. And I wanted to normalize doing that. So that was really the moment, if you will. Like, it's why it's the opening quote of my book, because it was kind of like my the origin story of what really rattled me enough to say, you know what, like, enough's enough. How much more of my career am I going to give to the traditional powers that be in a profession that are going to just take too long to see the vision that I do, which was business content for women that were high level, high powered, mature, right? Like, women that had just been craving to have content catered to them, that didn't just feel like, go girl, just be confident, right?
Yes, it doesn't need to be just empowerment, right? There's all the things that you accomplished along the way. Yes,
exactly.
Okay,
so that was like the origin.
No, that's great. The origin story is incredible. I think two things stood out from that that I want to dive deeper into. The idea of having to choose, which I know a lot of us are often forced to be put in boxes which we cannot be in. And then also this idea of, the content that you're excited to create, whether it ranges from Sallie Krawcheck, women wealth management, to people who are launching IPOs and at the helm of everything as it relates to money, movement, and creation. And so I was curious, in terms of the business content that has stood out to you the most, that you've enjoyed covering, or things that really move the needle for you at Fintech Is Femme, is there one that you can tell a unique story on, just because of all the things that you just highlighted?
Yeah, oh goodness. What's the beautiful part about Fintech Is Femme and my coverage is that I just am never bored. There's like an endless supply of fantastic builders, whether they're, leading big banks or leading massive fintech companies, or are leading fintech startups and just getting off the ground. There's just no shortage of those stories that I can share that then creates that ripple effect of someone seeing themselves, right? Like, ultimately, you can't be what you can't see. So I need people visually, physically seeing women that make them see themselves, so that they know what is possible. I mean, to that point, I kind of am always like evolving, even like beyond the book. The hardest part about writing, one of the hardest parts about writing the book was probably the fact that I had to stop. I only profiled 40 women in there, and I could have just kept going. 90,000 words, not enough. I could have kept going. I could have kept adding more amazing women. But something that has really moved the needle in terms of storytelling with Fintech Is Femme has been the profiles. So what I'll do is I'll actually to see how the sausage is made is actually, I love having someone on my podcast first. So having that human, it's called, my podcast is called Humans of Fintech, having that like human conversation, learning about these women's personal journeys that then led them to have enough conviction to start a fintech company and then go and like quit whatever Wall Street job they had to go and do that, despite the odds. Like they know the odds are against them and they're still going to go after it. So they're going to take that risk. To me, those are the stories that really move the needle, whether it's on stage, whether it's in the book, whether it's in my newsletter. It's showcasing, look, here's Stephanie Ferris, right? The CEO and president of FIS, one of the largest fintech companies, right? And like her being open and authentic and vulnerable enough. And I profiled her in a story earlier this year, and I did it in Forbes and my newsletter. And just her flat out being like, if you're not making decisions that don't make you uncomfortable, then you're not playing it big enough.
Yeah. That's a statement in and of itself. And that is obviously what you've been doing. And so when you highlighted, like, you can't be what you can't see, that helps me think about just your founder story in and of itself, right? Because you were seeing a lot of these people in the coverage that you did from a journalism perspective, but how did we get to founder? Who did you look to for inspiration in that regard? And then book as well, right? Because there's so many different platforms that you have. I want everybody to understand all the ways you got there and how you did it.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest shout out in terms of how I got started is gonna be Sallie Krawcheck, because she was really the first woman I interviewed while I was at Investment News before I started Fintech Is Femme, and it was a great, really amazing pub at the time to write for. There's a flagship publication for the wealth management and financial services space, hugely influential. That's how I met Sallie Krawcheck. I also was super inspired I profiled and interviewed Melody Hobson as well, who's the co-founder and co-CEO of Ariel Investments, right? Exactly. I believe it's the largest Black-owned asset management firm
in the country.
And, yeah, and obviously she's like Melody Hobson, so just icon. But I actually profiled and interviewed both of them in the same year, and hugely, and they were like front page of the magazine. It was really amazing, and we were honoring them. But those two were huge stories that really stood out, that really helped me understand what I could be doing. Because if you read Sallie's story in my book, she pretty much completely lays the blueprint for how she started Ellevest, and and I basically followed exactly what she did, but I just didn't start a fintech company yet. I could,
the possibilities
but it all starts,
are endless.
but to give you like the blueprint, it all starts with community, right? So like, how do I kind of galvanize people? You're really there's like a saying that all it takes to become a leader is like one other person to believe in you. And that's just kind of how I started. I just started, like, if there was a Sallie Krawcheck out there and a Melanie Hobson, there had to be way more. Like, there had to be so many more women just like her out there that I just haven't met. And so I just started, like, I started with Sallie, started with Melody, started meeting others, getting introduced, and I actually built this media company. I like to think of it interview by interview. I did not have some magical viral moment on the internet. I did not and I didn't chase that type of virality. There's some people in my position who in similar positions as me who like posted on TikTok once, went viral. It's like career made, right? That is not my story, and it's not, and I don't want people to think that's the only way to do this. Like I said, I started with community. I started with interviewing people, whether they had already had some prestige, whether they had not had any prestige. I like to think of it a little bit like Oprah, right? Like Oprah kind of normalized going on TV and just interviewing your everyday person and seeing how like amazing that they can be and relatable that they are, and all the things you can learn from them. So that for me was what I did. I felt a responsibility to make these women like famous, like to make these through these profiles, to like make these women the superheroes that they are, even if you've never heard of them or they hadn't gone viral or whatever either. So yeah, that was for me how I started, and that's how I recommend anyone start, is like, if you want to create a media company, you have to start with like, how do I just start interviewing the people in this category that I look up to?
Sure.
And interviewing someone can be relatively easy. Like, if you reach out wanting to interview someone, a lot of the times they're going to say yes. Like, people love to be interviewed.
Sure.
People like talking about themselves. So like, and just go and listen and observe. Ask that person you interviewed to introduce you to another person that you could interview, or see who in their circle they're talking about. And then you just start to create this like momentum. And that's essentially what I did. And then all of a sudden, PR people, they see and they know what my work is, right? Oh, I got a badass woman in my network I want to get in front of, send it to Nicole. Like, now I'm just the go-to person that people know, okay, here's an amazing woman in fintech or finance. I'm going to send it to Nicole so she can cover it. And so then it creates this amazing momentum. And that's always my recommendation. And then obviously I always say, start with a newsletter. That's what I started with. I just started profiling women in a newsletter, and it took off from there.
Well, there's so much here. I think, starting the media brand with interviewing, I think, is brilliant. Obviously, we're in the middle of an interview, so I love that you gave us such good tips around, one, the power of human connection. Everybody likes hearing stories, sharing about themselves, connecting with others in a way that's powerful, and unexpected connections that you may find along the way. And then two, using storytelling as strategy, I think, is so powerful. And I'd love to hear more about that in the context of all the things that you've done. So we heard interviews as a way to start your media brand, profiles as a way to give other women visibility, whether they needed it or not, which you can continue to do in another book if you so choose, right? The list is never ending. And then three, how does it, manifest in your newsletter, in your podcast, and the other people who get visibility and access to you through the things that you've covered. And so when I think about, all the things that you've done and you're excited about, what's coming up right now that aligns to that? Because I know I've been able to come to your events myself and see what it looks like when you're interviewing women who you are excited to give a platform for. Some of the events that you have coming up as it relates to fintech and climate, I'm excited to be a part of and learn more from you in that regard. So storytelling as strategy is like a thing that I'm leaned into with you right now. And so take it wherever you'd like, but things there that I think are super powerful.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, that next step was always the in-person. Especially with our industry, right? Like, fintech is really really more fin than tech per se in terms of culture. I would say. And so and I do think that people, no matter what, people want to get together. They want to get together in person. There's obviously virtual elements and things that you can do there. But that would be like the next step. So because what happens, even this week, actually just last night, I did a live podcast event where I interviewed this amazing woman at this big accounting firm, and kind of went through her story. At the end of the live podcast recording, at the end of the event, she came up to me and she was like, I'm a fan. I will do anything, like anything you need, anything you want, because I took care of her story, right? I gave it the thoughtfulness and intention and that it deserved, and a platform. And so you take that from a newsletter or social, and you take that from the digital world, and then you create a stage for that in the real world. And so that's kind of how my content all fuels itself. I have to get people together in person. I fundamentally believe that sometimes there's just nothing more powerful than getting people together in a room. I mean, if it's not obvious, then I will say that one of my writing inspirations is Gloria Steinem, because duh. But and that's something that she would always say, right? So that we're, as humans, we're communal creatures. We thrive. We want to be around each other, whether we realize it or not. We want to have that connection. And sometimes the greatest movements and the greatest changes happen in a living room, in a small group, in a small office, and so to be able to replicate that, but then start to build on top of that in scale. The first few events I'd start with were much smaller, a big, kind of like a mantra we have here at Fintech Is Femme is to start small, scale fast, dream big.
Yeah.
And that's really how we manage our events. So big things coming up. Obviously, Ruthie, you alleged to it, but we are hosting the Emerald Climate FinTech Summit in New York City on September 19th to just bring together the climate fintech community during Climate Week, and to talk about the ways that fintech and climate intersect. And there's so many financial implications around climate, and largely ones that do impact women the most. So that was very important to be a part of. And then we are hosting, every year we host a massive Fintech Is Femme Leadership Summit, which is kind of like the next evolution of like the newsletter and everything coming together. We hosted one in New York this year. We host it every year in April during New York FinTech Week. It is our largest event of the year. This year we had 400 people there in the Time Center, and it was massive and amazing and a huge undertaking. Cool. But the reality is that I decided to do these events and make these big stages because I'm not willing to wait for the industry events that are out there now to catch up to the Fintech Is Femme vision. Yeah. Exactly. So I decided to say, I'll do it then. Like if no one else is going to build a stage and put women on stage as experts, not just like putting women on stage to talk about being women. I want you on stage talking about your expertise. I want us learning from women about AI, go-to-market, fundraising, right? Like the marketing strategies, how to tell stories, I want to hear how to build a business model, a structure, how to serve small businesses, like climate fintech. I want to hear all of those things from women doing it.
You've done that like time and time again. And let's talk about how you even plan the summit, right? Because that's how we're connected. And I thought it was so brilliant how you did this. You brought a bunch of experts together in a room a few weeks ago now, and you interviewed them about topics that were in a casual way, right? Things that they want to talk about that relate to their expertise, that relate to their businesses, to the things that they care about, so that you can build the vision for your big events. And so I'd love if you could give people a little bit more color about what that experience is like, because it was incredible. First time I was a part of something like that. And here we are today.
Yeah. So what else? Whenever I start to build a summit, I typically I've been building summits even before Fintech Is Femme, just in jobs and those massive Vegas conferences I've been doing for longer. Yeah. Well, I've got a lot more longer to be doing them. Anyways, but it's been great learning. Because now I can replicate them for myself, right? So I always start with an event chair. So I need none of this gets built without community, right? Like I don't really believe in the whole self-made thing. Nothing is self-made. Everything takes work and a village. So I will always start with an event chair. Someone, just like a woman in the community who is down to fundamentally like take this task on with me. We always have one. So like for our next big summit that we're planning is the Leadership Summit San Francisco edition. And we're doing it October 8th during San Francisco Tech Week. And Asia Bradley, who is a VC lead at Stripe, she is our event chair for that. So and her job is to help bring in some sponsors, to even help sponsor it herself, to help shape the agenda and all of that good stuff. From there, we start to kind of put like an open invitation out there to get smaller groups together to start the kickoff conversation. Instead of a lot of conferences will like set an agenda and then try to retrofit people to it, I prefer to build together. So
Right.
like, I want to build this with the community. I want to hear what ideas they have. What do they want to see? And then I can kind of take those pieces and then as the storyteller, weave together a narrative that feels almost like theater, but you're learning and
Right.
it's education. So that's how it starts. And that's what you saw was like, okay,
Right.
this is a group of women right here, like a small, like 4 or 5 of us, like 5, 6 of us that want to start to build this out together. And then they all become event chairs. And
Right.
then for me, it's important for all of us to see the value and benefit of us doing this together. So whether that's you amplifying your own thought leadership and learning how to speak on stage, whether it's you wanting to learn how to build an event, how do you pitch sponsors, how do you get this, like how I'm happy to like not gatekeep any of that information and just show
Right.
you how it's done. But it always starts small, and then you just kind of keep telling the story of building in
Sure.
public, and then more people are then like, they'll see it and be like, oh, what's this? Like, I want to be a part of this. I want to be part. And then before you know it, you have 100, 200 or so people. But it's a lot of work. But you starting small is one way to just like make it feel possible.
Sure. Sure. And in terms of the themes that are starting to come out of both upcoming events, one of the things that obviously resonated with me is the small business focus, and how does that impact 2 ways. One, small businesses are the backbone of our economy. Small businesses literally touch everything we do across each industry. And 2, all of us, we're sitting in New York, we're experiencing the heat wave that we're encroached upon, but also there's lots of natural disasters this week. We're seeing, whether it's tsunami warnings in Alaska and Hawaii to the fires in LA and floods in Texas, right? These themes impact not only, human lives and safety, but the businesses that ultimately are helping to save people. And one of the things that I want to talk about with you is this impact on small businesses in general and the things that you've been talking about. I know in my work at Fiserv, we're looking at small business performance based on all of these natural disaster impacts, right? We have the insights to help people understand how sales activity ebbs and flows based on all of these different scenarios on a monthly basis. And that's what I'm excited to talk about for the Emerald, Climate FinTech Summit coming up soon. But there's so many other areas within the small business space that I'm sure you're thinking about now. So is there one that you'd like to highlight or focus on in terms of the connections with why we're here today?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we did a better job of taking care of our small business owners that make up such a massive part of our entire economy,
Yes.
that things would definitely be going a lot better for everyone involved. I mean, what is it like? Small businesses make up, it's 90 something percent,
97%.
right?
Yeah.
97% of like our entire economy. So and and technically I'm considered one as well, right? Something that kind of fast like that, and there's a lot of small business content and how fintech can be helping in the book as well. But a section in the book that kind of like stands out to me that relates to that and that I'm still very much paying attention to is probably the story of 2 founders, Laura Hodgson and Stacey Abrams, who Stacey you've probably heard of.
Yes.
But yes, there's a whole section in the book about how they started their company called Now. And it really grew from their own experience as small business owners. They actually started like they're both they're like wanting to help solve the issue for moms to be able to have warm milk for like their babies in their baby bottle. And they actually ended up securing like a massive enterprise deal with like a Whole Foods type, grocery, like massive chain, but they couldn't get the cash and capital to actually be able to produce the product. So they had, and then they were dealing with these, net 30s, net 45s, net. And so they actually ended up what they called growing out of business. They ended up having they actually shut down. Like, think about that. they got their most massive like check possible coming, but they couldn't facilitate the order because they couldn't get the capital to do it. And then if your business isn't over 2 years old, or if your business, there's like certain elements, and I run into some of those issues myself. But it's a part of like the endurance that like you have to have. But luckily I'm, all digital. If you have a physical product that you don't have the capacity to make in that scale without cash in hand, then yeah, I understand from their story in the book, like what else was there for them to do. They shut down and they end up deciding to start now as a way to be able, and that's the name of the company, as a way to be able to like, how do we leverage the power of like different types of data points and information, whether it's like contracts that are signed or what have you, to enable getting that type of capital to small business owners when they need it, when they have these type of enterprise deals that happen, so that they can fulfill them. So I think for me, that's still something that I'm very interested in terms of how we help small businesses. How do we solve this capital flow issue that is still so pertinent today, and seems like that, and based on even like my own knowledge of like the capabilities of what we have technology wise, I don't really understand why this is such a problem. So I've heard VCs in the past say like accounts receivables is something that they're also very interested in, like seeing more advanced tech around and companies around. So that to me is a huge thing, because if you could get because if you get a small business owner their money in time, then it's not even just about the money. It's about the mental stress that you're dealing with from not getting paid on time, or not having the capital, or not like, that's actually what's worse. And that's what causes someone to close the doors,
to shut down.
Yeah. So that to me is a huge thing. And it is related to, and that then those ripple effects end up touching the environment, right?
Absolutely. And you've touched on so many great things, but some of the surprising lessons from your book are some of the things you've just teased out now. And so I was curious, because I know there are some people on the call who are also wanting to become authors themselves and in the process of writing their first book. So we are, in the context of a library. So I did want to get back to the book side of things, because I'm sure there's more surprising stories that you learned along the way. It's been a year now since your book, almost a year now since your book launched. So the lessons you've learned there, anything around kind of the surprising insights, things you've learned on your tour from conversations with people, and how has that impacted you as a first-time author?
Yeah, so I often share that a good way to summarize the experience of being a first-time author is like you like put your whole life on hold to write this book for like a year. That's at least I did for about a year-ish. And really no one cares, like the rest of the world keeps spinning. People keep moving around, like you feel like, I feel like this, I was like in pause, like in this, and the world kept spinning around me, and I was like, oh, I missed that. Oh, like that's kind of how it feels. So that's how I would describe the actual like process of putting it together. And then it's true, like technically, like no one cares unless you make them care, right? So that was something, I had a publisher, obviously I have a publisher, Wiley, outside of them kind of like physically making the book and then putting it in bookstores and like putting it online, and like that sales element of it. When it comes to the marketing side of things, it's 100% on you. You have to do everything. And I think that's something that isn't always realized for any authors. Even I thought like, Wiley must do something to help me promote this thing. The answer is no. The answer is zero. So and that is, it's not like Sex in the City, ladies, where you're like your publisher's throwing you a party. No, we decided to so like we as a company, Fintech Is Femme, decided to make it a thing. So no one's going to care if you write a book unless you decide to tell everyone why they should care. So you have to go out and you have to do like, you have to do the press and you have to create the opportunities. And so we actually were the ones that developed the book tour. We started with a book launch party the day the book launched last year, October 24, I believe. And then we hosted a big book launch party in New York, where I'm based here, and went from there. We did right after, I think we did Las Vegas at Money 2020. We did San Francisco. We did another place that's losing my memory. Oh, Boston. I did a book signing at Harvard. So we just like
places. Yeah.
I would say, like, for any first time authors out there, after you've like gone through the grueling writing process,
Right.
that's really, then you go through the grueling promotion process. And so that's something to be prepared for on the other end. I would say that obviously social media is your friend.
Yes.
Right. Go back to like leveraging your community to share. I did for me, I did things that they give you, like, your publisher will probably give you X amount of free copies.
Yeah.
I decided to use those to like send to people who have influenced me, right? Or like women who are in the book, or or even creating like graphics and things and momentums for people to be able to share about the book and to feel like special. So those are all little things that you can do to help market the book, as well as just kind of like sharing the journey. I think looking back, I wish I would have shared more of the journey of actually writing it. I still can,
Yeah.
I still could do that, but I was so deep in it that it was hard to even think of anything else outside of just writing the book. Okay. I do see a lot of Q&A questions. Could you have hired an agent who had connections to help you market and promote your book on influential networks? Yes, I could have. I just didn't. So like, there are people, like, I did not have a lit agent. I did not do any of that. It depends on what you want. For me, the book was really meant to be a moment in time. It was meant for me to kind of like capture those first few years of building Fintech Is Femme, of the first like hundreds of interviews I did, and then pulling the best stories out and synthesizing it. And it's funny because like in a way you like write the book, and my publisher did tell me, like, think of it as a moment in time. Don't be too attached to like everything, because you're going to write this thing and then life moves on, right? So that to me would be like the answer. I think that if you want to hire a lit agent and do all of that, it's probably something I would look into for my second book. Like I'm definitely open to writing another book eventually, but I would probably look into that. But I wanted to kind of do this in this way specifically for this book specifically. And I was good with that. Like, I think I wanted to write a book for the women in my community now. Like, the dedication in the book is for the Fintech Is Femme community. This was like my love note to them. And so maybe the next book is my, like, the book I write about building a media company, or like
the lessons,
all those lessons,
the journey along the way. Media maven.
Yeah, and that could be the mass market book. But and also something that was important to me, at the back of this, this is a book that's in the business and economics section. I'm one of the few women even in there. That was also very important to me, was to write a business and economics book that not only was written by a woman, but showcased women's stories in a very real business, tangible way. So those are some of the things. And now the book is really like a tool in my toolkit as a business owner. So people will hire me to, like, earlier this year in March, I went to Istanbul to do a book signing and a keynote presentation, and someone hired me to do that for like an internal corporate event, right? Stuff like that. I love doing that. I love, and at the end of the day, there's also like, people ask me if I get tired of like signing books, and I don't. There's truly like no better feeling than having like a stack of your books in front of you and like a whole line of people and everyone wanting to meet you and like you and take a photo and say hi and sign it, and they love it and they tell you how much they love the book and they're excited to just talk to you and hear your thoughts. And that's like so beautiful, it's something I definitely don't ever get tired of, and I love doing. So All's to say, to wrap with a bow,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to market the hell out of it. You could hire people to help if you want. I am a media company, so I was kind of like, I think I could do my own marketing on this thing.
Yeah.
And then how can I get a book signed? I'd love to purchase one by you since you're so inspirational. Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you so much. This is such a good question. How do I get a virtual? I was like, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to meet each other in person at some point.
You could follow up on LinkedIn to connect with you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Maybe we can figure out how to, at the end of the day, if you purchase a book, then we just have to physically see each other at some point so that I can sign it. But I love that question. And thank you so much, Camilla, I believe, Camilla Torres. Let's see. I would also say to answer some more of her questions. Have you ever got rejected from someone who wanted to interview you or meet with? If so, how'd you manage to get your foot in the door to eventually land that one-on-one meeting with them? So yes. Typically what will happen is that if you reach out to someone and the way that they'll typically say no is either they just won't respond to you, or they'll say that they're too busy and like to come back later. And that's fine, that's just the first no. Then what you can do is I would if there's someone with some internet presence or like prolific enough, honestly, you don't really need to interview them to profile them. I would just use the sources that are on the internet. Let's say it's someone with a TED Talk. Like I've done that. I have written a profile on someone who just had a TED Talk and then they saw it and it made them pay attention to me. Then they were like, oh my gosh, who is this girl? Because I just did it. I just did it anyway. Like, okay. And then they were more than happy to meet with me after. They were like, this woman's, I'm actually talking about Angel Rich. I had never reached out to her to interview her yet. I just found her TED Talk. She's the founder and CEO of Credit Rich, and she's profiled in the book. She's an amazing TED Talk called Be the Trojan Horse. Highly recommend. Yeah. And so that's like a great example of that. Like I was just so inspired by her talk that I decided to write about her in my newsletter. I hadn't reached out or anything, so she technically never rejected me, but I hadn't ever talked to her. I just profiled her in my newsletter anyway through her TED Talk. She saw it, let me know like she like loved it at one point online. And then I actually saw her at an event, at like a Forbes Power Women event, and was able to go right up to her and be like, hi, I'm Nicole, I profiled you in my newsletter. And she was like, that was so thoughtful. Like, I can't believe you did that. And she was like, oh my gosh, here's my cell phone number. Here's my, and now we're like besties, right? And so that to me is how, like, to get your foot in the door, you just kind of do it. Like, it'd be harder. It's harder and I also think that like with social, you can do little things to kind of like court people. So make sure you're following their stuff. Make sure you like all their content. Make sure you're commenting on it, sharing your voice and opinion. Maybe you're resharing their stuff because it makes it so inspirational, right? Like that to me, that's like, you can start planting the seed and get them to pay attention to you. But once you do something thoughtful and intentional enough for someone, they're like bound to reach out. Yeah. And that's how I've been able to get my foot in the door.
So this is so useful. I think one of the things that I'm curious about is on the flip side of things, right? When people you've had to convert into allies and sponsors, when people hear the word fintech and feminists, do you ever have the other side where you have to justify or explain? You highlighted that like, the business and economic section is where I sit. So don't get it twisted as it relates to your expertise, but obviously the world is the way the world is. And sometimes we get these challenges. So it'd be helpful to hear how you've had to, counterbalance them, explain, objection handle, things like that too.
Oh yeah. That's normal. When I first started Fintech Is Femme, I got a lot more of those type of comments. I get them less now, largely because I don't even entertain it. I'm at a point now, 4 years later, where if you don't understand, like let's say I'm on a call with and this happens. It's funny. I'll have someone interested in working with me reach out to me we'll hop on a call, and then they like want me to convince them why Fintech Is Femme makes sense. And I'm like, well, I'm happy to show you my data, which is more than enough to convince you.
Tell you what it is.
Yeah, because we stand on business. But if you can't get out of your narrow-minded thinking enough to look beyond the name and see that this is so much more than just a women's thing, that this is truly a business media platform built for everybody and not just women. If you can't see beyond that, then we don't even need to really have a conversation. You can come back to me when you've done enough exploration of your own.
They've done the work. To learn.
To learn. Because I've had amazing partners. Like I'll use I just did an amazing sponsored deep dive for a company called Akoya. And they do like open finance work and partner with like banks and fintechs for that, and like to have their data be aggregated clean and well. And so I love that, and I love that mission. And their CEO and founder, his name is Paul LaRusso. And he was the one that was like, he loves the newsletter, loves reading it, you know, he like just told me, and he's just one example. There's many amazing male CEOs just like him who just aren't blinded by purple or the name, right? Like who see
even
so
though
much
purple
beyond.
is good color, regal, your loyalty, everything,
exactly.
Your branding,
Ruthie understands why I've gone with purple for that royalty. But it's also because it has like, for me, like the darker deep purple has a lot of like masculine, feminine qualities that really like mesh well together. And it's never been about exclusion ever. It's always been about inclusion and opening up the access and the doors for everyone, because there's so many, even men, like there's so many men out there who don't resonate with what is considered traditional masculinity or whatever, right? Like I think we all can. There's actually there's one of the women in the book, she's the former CEO of eToro US, and yes, and her name's Lule de Messe, and great friend and mentor to me now. But you know, she rised up the ranks in wealth management, eventually to become CEO of eToro US, which is one of the biggest fintech investing platforms in the freaking world. So for her, she was an immigrant Black woman, to hold that position was so amazing and such an inspiration. But she used to always tell me that whenever she would kind of mentor me, she'd be like, frankly, our obsession with like identity as a society just kind of shows us how behind we are. Why, you know? And that always kind of resonated with me, because it's so much more, it's really, when we all come together and we all see how much more we have in common, right? Then there's just so much more power and abilities we can do collectively together to help make the world a better place. But anyways, but yes, all's to say that luckily now I don't have to steer, like I just don't even have those conversations. Like I'm just like, cool, like let's just move on. Then I don't have time to convince you, because I'm working with a lot of amazing clients that don't need convincing.
Like, they don't need it, and it'll be showcased through the work.
Yes. And I will say that, like, at the end of the day, I have an audience of, you know, my newsletter metrics, 85% women in my audience. And even on my socials, like you can kind of see the gender breakdowns of that. So I largely hold a female audience that is so underserved, so hungry for content, for partnerships, for tools. Like they really trust me to show them, like, if someone's willing to partner with me, that really showcases your values, that really showcases what you care about. It means you care about human, and just as much as you care about profit. And that's really more of the link that ties Fintech Is Femme together with any of the people that we work with. Do you care about humans first? And do you know that if I focus on humans, profitability is going to follow? And that's actually the secret sauce. Content, community, taking care of your people, that generates revenue. And I know it because I have proof. I have data. I have proof that shows it. And so, and I work with some of the biggest fintech companies and financial institutions in the world. NASDAQ, Salesforce, FIS, like Brex. It's just a no-brainer. Also to say, the comments used to happen in the beginning. I went through my own, I had to go through my own struggled with
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
I've done like YouTube shows in the past where people have said horrible things about the way I look, you know, how I talk, all that stuff. You just once
Have to
it
keep
happens
going.
to you, yeah, once it happens to you once, you go for a good cry, and then you
Push
kind of
forward.
just are like, whatever, like forget them.
Right.
Like,
Well, I'm glad you're
yeah.
able to dust it off your shoulders like that. I know we only have a few minutes left, and so I want to do a lightning round of questions and
Okay.
then see if there were any others that were missed earlier, because I think we did get a bunch. So
Yeah, I can answer some of these.
no, I'll do some here, and then we'll get back to them just in the spirit
Okay.
of time. So the connection between human and profit. I love that you highlighted that from a community perspective. Is there one person that you think who you're going to highlight soon, or is representing that right now, whether she is a woman or not in that space? Who is she, so that people can look out for her?
Yeah, I mean, I guess for me, top of mind, I'm about to do a fraud fighter event. Fraud and
Oh,
identity is something that is very important to me.
yeah.
It's not my event. It's actually one of the people one of the fintech companies we're working with. It's called Unit
Sure.
21. The founder and CEO, her name is Trisha Kathari. I just did a podcast interview with her on Humans of Fintech. And it was really amazing and dynamic. You know, she's an engineer who used to work at like big buy now, pay later fintech companies,
Great.
decided to start her own when she saw just how antiquated like consumer protection was in terms of fraud and identity in financial services. And so she, you know, decided to kind of build and engineer and create a way for that to happen that is sustainable and doesn't leave so much money on the table. But I just think like that protection of our customers and our users as
It's
financial
critical.
services and
Yeah.
fintech companies is so critical. So she's someone that I'll be back on stage with in a couple weeks. So she came top of mind.
Amazing. Favorite podcast besides your own that you go to for learning that you can share with others?
I mean, okay, so I will say I'm a big fan of Call Her Daddy. You know, you gotta pick and choose your episodes. So I may not
Sure.
listen to all of them, but I do think that something that Alex Cooper does do a great job of is showcasing that human element, right? She's interviewing kind of some of the biggest celebrities or people that you maybe have seen on TV, but then showcasing them as humans, showing them behind the scenes, showing them in their, you know, on the couch, cozy, vulnerable.
Great.
And you learn so much, even as a business leader. Like I learned so much from hearing, you know, them, even an actor, like a female actor talking about how she negotiated a pay raise, right? Or
Right.
hearing someone talking about how they dealt with any mental health, or those things are critical to business, excuse me, and being able to have the endurance to move forward, especially as an entrepreneur. So I find that valuable.
If you could build a Fintech Is Femme product, what would it be for the
Yeah.
marketplace based on all the things that you're seeing? What would you want to build, particularly in this time with fintech trends? There's so many. What one would stand out for you that you'd like to align to?
Ooh, if I'm building a fintech company, honestly, I would love to see like the fintech company out there that actually helps consumers be able to know what their next best action is in terms of their finances. I think that a lot of the fintech solutions that are out there are actually quite disparate and operate in that kind of like silo capacity.
Sure.
I think we're back. I think we're going back to where people want things more bundled. And to me, I would love to have like the magical fintech app that is able to see all of my information, finances, whether it's my personal, my business, and then enable me to say, this is how I could grow my money. This is how I could like invest it better.
Smart. Yep.
And then have a lot of that behavioral finance element to it to enable me to have a better relationship with my bank account. I'd love to see that.
That's brilliant. Okay. Let me see if there are any more questions that we didn't get to answer. I saw, one here in terms of developing a newsletter in a niche market. How would you give advice on that?
Yeah, so the first, like I said, interview by interview to start, Kamala, and then in discovering industry leaders in this field. So one of the best things to do, I mean, honestly, LinkedIn, right? Like go on LinkedIn, go connect with people, go to industry events, connect with people. Some of the like the way I built my relationship with Lule was I just started showing up to events that she was speaking at. And she kept seeing me over again. Before I know it, she's like, same thing, right? As Angel, gave me her cell phone number. She's like, you're coming to all my events. And I was like, I just love you. And then she like gives me her cell phone number. We have brunch, relationship made, right? Like, yeah, exactly. So that's, I think, a great way to start is just like seeing who is on LinkedIn, tracking some industry niche events. And I will sometimes just go right to the speaker faculty, see who's on there, find when they're talking, go attend, make sure you meet them in person, even if it's just a quick handshake, and then keep that going so that you build the relationship.
That is so smart. I think the other two we've kind of covered already. So I just want to say, Nicole, this has been amazing. I know we're over time in case there's any other questions, though. I'm so grateful that you're here. I feel like a full circle moment over and over again with you. The thing that you highlighted, right, is what we're doing today, the way you see yourself as a journalist and how that has blossomed into several other roles is something that is so inspiring. And I think ultimately everybody here can learn from it in terms of all the things that they're trying to build, leveraging on their leaning into their own community, thinking about humans first and then profit later is another key takeaway. And just understanding that the impact of money, right, at the context of everything with who we are, how it moves, how you use it, how you leverage it to build, and how you leverage it to connect is something that I think is super powerful, and I'm excited to continue to explore this with you. So I'm so glad that you were here. I want everyone to find ways to connect with you. You have multiple, but reiterate them for the group again, just so that they can follow up. So I'll pause for that.
Fintechisfemme.co, CO. It's not .com. Anyways, fintechisfemme.co is a great way to check out everything. You can see the book on there. You can see upcoming events. You can sign up for the newsletter. The newsletter really is like the ultimate source of truth in my ecosystem. I put everything in there, every event, every story, every podcast. You can check it all there.
Amazing. And the book behind me, the cover behind her as well. You can see it, Fintech Feminists. Check that out. You can get it pretty much everywhere, right, Nicole?
Yes.
And thank you so much again for being here. I'm so excited to see what you do next and have you again in another capacity. So this has been amazing. Elizabeth, thank you for hosting this event for us today with the New York Public Library. And for the audience, thank you for being so engaging and asking great questions. If there's any follow-up ones, just send them to me or Nicole on LinkedIn. And I really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you for being here.